Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, a Photography 101 episode, and that is your kit lens a treasure or is it trash? So a lot of professional reviewers will tell you to trash the kit lens, don't even bother getting it, go with an inexpensive prime to start your more serious photography career. And I'm here to kind of argue the opposite as an enthusiast photographer. So let's look at some of the complaints and some of the strengths of a kit lens. So one of the strengths is clearly that kit lenses are giveaways. So if you look at this first graphic, this was just a screen shot from Amazon done a few days ago, and you look at this D3300, which is the latest entry-level camera from Canon, you can see on the bottom there in the middle that the camera alone costs about the same price. In fact, the exact same price as if you go in the upper left part of the image as the camera with the kit lens. So here the kit lens is actually free. Now in this next image, this next screenshot, you can see a D5300, which is the next level up camera. Look at where the camera body is, and right next to it you can see the camera body with the kit lens. It's actually cheaper to buy the camera body with the kit lens than it is to buy just the camera body. How's that for crazy? If you go to the extreme right, you're going to see a little bit more expensive setup, and that's buying the camera body with, it would technically would be a kit lens, but a more versatile kit lens. That lens would normally sell for about $500 on its own. So if you wanted to get that more versatile lens, you could save a couple $100 by buying it as a kit, and it gives you a little bit more zoom reach, which you might find handy, and it might be the only lens that you ever need. So let's go back and look at these lenses. So clearly they're phenomenal values. People complain about the construction. Well, naturally, if you're getting something for free, you're not going to expect the same construction that you're going to get in a pro level lens like this Nikon here. This happens to be a Nikkor 24-70 constant aperture 2.8 lens, right? So this is going to be much better metal construction than this plastic construction. People will complain that the mount on these lenses is plastic, so that's where it connects to the camera. And the reality is that that's not going to be as durable as on this lens where you have a metal mount, which is a lot more durable. But I've been taking pictures for many, many years, and I've never broke the mount of a plastic lens. I imagine if I dropped this camera in the right way, I could do it. But this is also a plastic camera, and I probably would damage the camera too. So be careful is the answer. People also will say that these lenses don't have enough resolving power for the sensors that you see in new cameras. So this has a 24 megapixel sensor. If you look at some sites like DxOMark, it will tell you that the resolving power of this lens is much less. But I'll tell you that the actual images are incredibly sharp. And so you look at a number versus the actual images. I've seen many incredibly beautiful pictures taken with a kit lens. They're all over the web. Gorgeous pictures. I've taken really nice pictures with kit lenses. Gorgeous pictures. Are they as tack sharp as a lens like this? Maybe not, but maybe that's just error too on my part. They're plenty sharp. In fact, even a lens like this will not be able to resolve to this sensor. And in fact, the best lens that I found was a Zeiss lens, a 55 millimeter prime lens. So it was only one focal length. It sold for over $4,000, and it was considered excellent, but it could not resolve fully to the 24 megapixels of this camera. So you have to put that into perspective. And maybe by resolving, what I really mean is how how sharp does the lens appear? So that's a better term for me to use. And so let's talk about sharpness. So how do you determine sharpness? One is how much contrast you have in a lens. So more expensive lenses may have more contrast. Contrast means the ability to discern between light and dark. So if this hand was 100% light, like white, and this one was completely dark, and you put them together, you would see a clear demarcation between the white hand and the black hand, and you'd say, well, that's good contrast if it was in focus. If this hand was gray and this was a slightly different shade of gray, put them together, less contrast. So lenses that offer higher contrast have perceived greater sharpness. The other is, and you can adjust contrast post-production. The other is resolution. What is resolution? Resolution is the ability of the lens to discern between two close points. Now, before I was a doctor, I was a research scientist, and I worked with microbes, bacteria, and the biochemistry of bacteria. And so we had microscopes, optical microscopes, that had to be very high resolution. And that meant that if we had two bacteria, bacteria 1 and bacteria 2, we needed to be able to see if they were separate or one big blob. So lenses, even camera lenses that have low resolution, even when the small objects are far away, they look like one big blob. Lenses that have high resolution, as you bring them closer, you can still see them as two separate entities. That's higher resolution. More expensive lenses will have higher resolution than cheaper lenses. How important is that in the real world of enthusiast or amateur photography? Somewhat important, but not as important as you think. The other thing that these lenses are is that they're a little bit slower, and that means that at their widest, the widest point, their kind of wide angle, this lens has an aperture that's only 3.5, and its widest angle when you zoom in is actually 5.6, which is relatively slow, where an expensive lens like this has a constant aperture across its entire range of 2.8, which is much faster. This will allow for shooting in lower light conditions. This will allow for a greater blur effect in portraits. And so it's worth it for a professional to have a lens like this. But there are many, many workarounds with something like this. So we have vibration reduction on these lenses, which means that we can shoot at slower shutter speeds and capture images that normally we could never capture hand holding. We could use a tripod. We could use a flash. This has a built-in flash or an external flash. Or because these cameras are now so sophisticated, we could turn up the ISO a little bit and turn up the gain on that sensor chip and still get a very acceptable picture using the slower lens. So there's many workarounds for this. Obviously, better, of course, but many, many workarounds. So I've kind of talked about some of the things that these lenses are plenty sharp. We can work with them in many different lighting situations just using a little creativity. So why even bother? So why do I even have this lens, right? Well, part of that, of course, is what's called GAS, or gear acquisition syndrome, which happens to photographers. We're always looking for that next whatever flash, lens, gadget that we think is going to take our photography to the next level. And this lens is more capable than the other kit lens. It has fancier elements in it, so it will have less distortion and light fall off. It has special coatings on the lens, which will also help with things like flare. It's built like a tank, so if I drop it, I'm less likely to damage it than I would if I dropped the kit lens. And it's certainly worth the additional cost. But don't forget, I got this on a super closeout clearance. This is a refurb. The camera and the lens, I could probably buy 9 or 10 of these for one of these. This whole setup, 9 or 10 for one of these. So you really have to think about it. Is it worth it to you to have this additional functionality? If you're a professional, well, sure. But if you're an amateur, get creative and do other things. Now, there's other reasons why you might want to buy a lens beyond the kit lens. So for instance, this lens is limited in its range. You might want a lens that has a wider angle, or maybe you're a wildlife shooter, or you want to do photographs and get that great blurry background with a fast lens that has a little bit longer focal length. So you might want a telephoto lens for that reason. You might want specialty lenses like a fisheye lens or a tilt shift lens. Many of those things you can do in software now, but you know, some people like doing it the old school way, and you can buy lenses that can do that. Many times photographers, and I would also support this, will say if you're going to get another lens, get a fast prime. And most companies will sell a lens that is either, usually both, a 50 millimeter, and then they'll also sell a 35 millimeter lens that is cheaply constructed but has reasonably good optics and is very fast, like a f1.8 for instance. So those lenses would be great to have if you're just to even experiment with things like portrait photography, or maybe you're taking shots in a museum or in a church or something, and you really want to gather as much light as possible into that lens. And so a lens like that will allow you to gather light in and produce better bokeh or bokeh blurred background, so you can do that sort of stuff too. So there definitely is a place for additional lenses. I have them, I love them, but I would say I've taken many, many, many wonderful pictures with just a kit lens. And a lot of times this is the lens it will be on my camera when I go out someplace, just because it's so light and it's so convenient, and you can't beat the deal. So to answer the question, are these treasures or are these trash? They are absolutely treasures. Don't let some professional tell you that you should get rid of it and immediately get a fast lens. The pictures that you take that will be the best pictures are the ones that are carefully crafted by you. So it's the person behind the camera, not the camera. My best pictures have come from taking either candid shots that have meaning or carefully crafting a shot's composition. That's the most important thing, at least in my photography. The second most important thing is understanding my camera well enough to manipulate it to capture the image that I want. That's almost as important in many instances. So the composition, or capturing the moment, and then understanding your camera. Lenses, in the ultimate physics of things, are critically important in giving you a clear, sharp picture, but these guys do just fine. Again, you want to get a little fancy and special, of course these will do better, but don't dismiss this. And I kind of akin it to a story. So let's say you had two students that took a test, and one got an A+ on the test, and you said, wow, that is awesome, you got an A+ on the test. The next kid worked really hard and got a B. Well, you wouldn't say to that kid that got the B, trash, throw it out, junk, get rid of it, get rid of him, right? That B is still a good grade. It's just not as good as the A+. And that kid that got the B has great value too. It might do just fine in whatever they're studying, correct? So think of these kit lenses as maybe B students. Think of these professional lenses or specialty lenses as being like A, or depending on the lens, A+ students. And it gives you a better perspective on this whole kit lens versus professional lens kind of phenomena. Don't always have to be upsold when you can really take great pictures, not only with the DSLR, with the kit lens, but even with a compact camera, and sometimes even with a cell phone. So with that, I'd like to say have a wonderful day. Please give my podcast a listen. You can find it on iTunes. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. I also would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, because it makes me make more videos. And I would really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, because that makes me happy. Take care, everyone.